Okay, so I thought I'd do a quick follow-up and demo on cutting the paper. I know this may seem kind of elementary, but I think there's a few tricks that I could probably show you. I've been doing a lot of collage over the last few years, and so I'll show you a few tricks. So one is make sure the surface that you're working on can withstand having a knife running through it. That kind of goes without saying. You don't want to cut like on top of your laptop, or use a thick piece of cardboard like the back of your drawing pad or something. Or if you've got one of these, if you can get one of these self-healing mats, those are the best. Okay, and also this table that I'm working on is just a piece of plywood essentially, so I can cut into that if I didn't have one of these. But I really like these self-healing mats. And then you guys have an X-Acto blade. I've got something very similar. And it really helps to have a nice, fresh, sharp blade to do this kind of stuff. If you have a dull blade, you're more likely to be frustrated with having an edge that's not coming out the way you want, or you'll have to press extra hard. That creates a lot of tension in your hand. Your hand will get tired, get cramps. It's not as safe, because if you're pressing really hard, you could end up bending the metal, or even I've seen pieces of the tip of a blade shoot off in the middle of class. You don't want sharp shrapnel flying around. So don't, if you have to press really hard, that means your blade is really dull. Get rid of it, get a new blade, and you'll be much safer and happier doing that, okay? So with this project, you saw that there were several examples where there's sort of a radial symmetry or repeating interlocking shapes. For the thumbnails, I think the way I kind of went about it was just to decide, first of all, do you want to do biomorphic, organic shapes, or do you want to concentrate on something more geometric? Or do you want a combination of both? That's certainly something you could do. But anyway, you can use the knife just to draw right through. This is very thin paper. So you can draw, if I want sort of an undulating shape, I can draw it that way. It's almost like a helix or a DNA, RNA kind of thing. And then I've got these. You can see my blade is not very sharp, actually. It's probably been a while since I've changed the blade. Ideally, that would you just cut right through it with one pass. So if the paper's doing this, it's time to change the blade. I will change mine later, but for this demo, I will continue with this crappy blade. You can see this is no good. Scissors, of course, are another option. I sort of free-handed these shapes, and that's one way to do it, obviously. And the other way would be to maybe fold. If you wanted to get something that's mirrored or that has a symmetry to it, you could fold the paper. And then with scissors or with a knife, you can cut so some kind of shape that has some, I'm going with biomorphic. Okay, and then I've got a shape that has symmetry to it, and I can go back into that and cut some more out of it. And I've got a couple shapes to work with, which are pretty cool. All right, so it's just I'm just kind of off the top of my head doing this. Got some other shapes that I cut out earlier that I might play with. So when you're doing your thumbnails, think about how this fits into the format. So with one shape like this, let's say I was to do something like that. So my square format, I would think about it like in this space, or how about in this space? And that's two different thumbnails right there. Or I could think about, well, just that section right there is pretty cool. There's another thumbnail. So you can get, 5 or even 10 thumbnails just off of one arrangement of shapes that you've cut out. Now it's starting to look like a face or something to that. Okay. And I could throw in some geometric forms along with it. right, pay attention to the negative space in between. That's really critical. I think this shape's kind of nice like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. This has a lot of possibilities in the negative space. You've got these edges that frame this biomorphic image in the middle. A lot of possibilities here. So there's another set of thumbnails that have a lot of action happening. I thought about this kind of format. When you have that triangle pointing up right to the edge, that creates a lot of, that can be tricky to pull off because it's going to point you right off the edge. So that might be better right there to have that shape expand off the page. Same thing in the corner. Sometimes if you have a really powerful shape in the corner of your format, it wants to either, you're cutting it off or you're pushing it off the corner. Sometimes it's more effective if it's not right at the corner of the format. But I've broken that rule several times and gotten away with it. Sometimes you might be able to as well. That's kind of neat. So if I had that as my, it's almost like a rocket ship with interesting negative space. Okay, so there's a lot of possibilities for making your thumbnails. Like I said, don't spend more than 20-30 seconds per thumbnail. Shoot them out really fast, and don't let overthinking get in the way. It's not about thinking at that stage. It's about letting sort of unconscious creativity kind of come out, and just go with your first thoughts, go with your first ideas, get all those out, and then after you've done that 100 times, you've got a wealth of possibilities, and you can start to narrow it down later on. So that's kind of the whole thumbnail thing. I think you guys have pretty much got the hang of that with the first project, but just to reiterate, that's kind of why we do so many thumbnails. Some of the greatest albums of all time, rock albums, they go into the studio with 30-40 songs, and only 8 or 9 of them make it onto the album. So that they pared it down to just the very best stuff. So that's kind of what the thumbnails is about. It's about giving you a ton of options, and then you can narrow it down to the ones that really work. Okay.